We are the fastest major growing economy in the world. Fastest growing major
But we
economy.
also have a lot to catch up.
Japan did this in the 60s. South Korea did it. China did it. So they've had a decades, not only one decade, sometimes 2 decades of growth at a blistering pace.
This
And
is 7, 8%
far
or
higher. No, far higher.
2-digit.
Far higher. 2-digit
Okay.
growth rate.
So do we need to achieve?
No, we don't. We don't need a double-digit growth to achieve these numbers. But I'm just trying to say that historically, these countries like Japan, South Korea, China, China is major. It's a large country. They've done it with sustained double-digit growth, lasting a decade or more.
And
So
they
there are
have-
historical precedents to this.
Are we seeing any inflection points in near future with the reforms that are happening, with the leadership that is in place? Do we expect in the next 5-10 years there'll be another jolt of growth happening? Hi, welcome to another podcast. Namaskar. I'm glad to be joined today by Aditya Pittie, who's authored this is your second book, no?
My second book, yes.
I don't know. मतलब 4 साल पहले कहीं आपने और किताबें लिखी हो, because this is a tome. This is like 3 books in here. He's authored Viksit Bharat, India at 2047, an important topic that I was also trying to delve into in my book, what I wrote, The Modi Disruption, India in Transition. Congratulations. I've had a chance to do around 40-45% of the book. It's a big book. So you've got to excuse me for it. I've skipped some portions.
And it's quite impressive that you finished 50% also.
Because it was all a learning experience. I want to do the same way. See, किताब भी ऐसी लिखी जाती है ना, because we are seeking answers to questions.
Right.
And we fail to find those answers. So we go on our research journey and then figure out.
Correct.
So congratulations for writing this book. And let's just jump straight into it. Why did you write this book?
So there were a number of reasons, Arjun. One was, the more I saw, there has been a lot of polarization of views these days, which is a global phenomenon. People are very polarized in their views, and there is a lot of biases that have crept in. I think in our narratives and in our kind of, understanding of what the situation is. So I thought that data is the best way to answer that. I always love using a famous quote by W. Edwards Deming, who's a quality guru. It says that in God we trust, rest must bring data. So I'm also, I'm an engineer by training, and I always think and work with data. So I thought, let's do a deep dive into data, fact check data, maybe double fact check. And that itself will tell a story and clarify the picture. Because, in data doesn't lie. And secondly, if I have used, say, a number like 100, at best you can argue with me that it's not 100, it's 90. But you can't tell me, can't argue with me that it's 0 or it's 1,000. So, so that's one of the
There's
things.
also that certainty around.
Yeah. The other thing, it actually, this book emanated from a very deeply personal space. My son is presently in the US. And, whenever I visit, meet
How
his
old is
friends, my son is 26.
I was a bit of a shock because you sitting right across to me, you don't look like somebody who's got a son of 26 years of age. So
So my son is,
congratulations.
thank you.
Who must the credit go to? Your wife or your family or the good genes?
I think I'll give the credit to my wife. Like I've credited her with the book as well. She helped design the cover of the book.
Which exceptional. I must acknowledge. The second the book came onto my table, and I figured it's a very a good output. It's a quality output. So
Thank you.
congratulations
Thanks.
to that as well.
So, when I visit my son and talk to his friends and students there, there is always a huge interest to know what is happening in India. And, the typical media in the US is a bit biased towards India. So I thought it's important that can I write something that again clarifies the picture and gives them a real picture of what's happening in India. I also think that, Viksit Bharat, developed nation, this is the generation, his generation and the generations to follow will be the ones who will be reaping the benefits of a Viksit Bharat. So it's very important for them to know the story, get confidence about it, and be enthused by that story, because they are the ones who are going to be really reaping all the benefits.
Like you said, we all stand on the shoulder of giants.
Yes, exactly.
So everything that
So,
we do
that's
today perhaps
really
is going
these
to
two
help.
things from where this idea came about.
But bringing this book in this way, was it how? Why is it that Viksit Bharat became an important point for you to build the conversation around?
See, personally for me, I have been very enthused with the trajectory that India has taken since 2014. Ever since Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji came on the scene, you can see the speed and scale with which development, reforms, etc., are happening in the country. And again, data supports that.
Okay.
One thing is for me to think that he has done something, but the data says that yes, a lot of work has happened. And I think that when Modi ji used the term Viksit Bharat, it kind of really hit home with me. I am a person from a corporate industrial background. And for me, it was like a vision and a mission statement. Corporates have these vision and mission statements. So for me, I looked at it as a vision and mission statement for the country being articulated by the Honorable Prime Minister, and around whom not only government and administration must come around, but I feel that all citizens must come around, to this vision and work on this mission towards Viksit Bharat.
Mhm.
So, a big theme in this book is also a call to action. It's a positive narrative about what's happening. And secondly, throughout the book, there is a theme where I'm continuously calling on citizens to come forward and do something for nation building. My feeling is that if everyone takes one step forward, the nation takes 140 crore steps forward.
Yes, such a good idea. But what was it? Do you remember the time when you first heard this idea of Viksit Bharat? Like you said, that you got enthused with the idea, and then much like I think broadly that is what the Prime Minister was also trying to do when he made the call for
Right.
Viksit Bharat, to enthuse the entire generation of people to work towards a more
Correct.
prosperous future. China also operates on the idea of a century of oppression and things like that. India, on the other hand, has been going through millennia of it. So it is only finally in the 21st century that we are breaking those shackles and trying to build what could be called as Sone ki Chidiya. That being said, the way you've structured the book, how have you gone about it? Give us a little peek into it.
So, again, I think a little bit of the structure comes from my education and training. I'm an engineer. I've studied in the US, and I've also studied at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And these are very kind of quant heavy, quantitative type of an education where they teach you to, think in numbers and frameworks. So kind of it's hardwired in my brain to think in frameworks. So I initially started looking at a larger framework of the book. And even Honorable Prime Minister, when he's articulated the vision of Viksit Bharat, which I talk about at the start of the book, it's unlike the Western vision or viewpoint of a developed nation. Strictly speaking, a developed nation, there are different definitions that come from World Bank and IMF. So these are all based on economic numbers. That if you hit a per capita income of such and such, you are classified as a developed nation or a developing nation. There's other new terminologies like advanced economy, etc. So all these frameworks from the Western nations are all based on economic numbers and per capita incomes. What excited me when Honorable Prime Minister articulated his vision was he said that for us, a Viksit Bharat or a developed nation is this. However, it is beyond this. So he said we want a nation where there is a minimum dignity and quality of life for every citizen. There is a respect and pride in our culture. That we have to achieve these targets with industrialization, etc., while having a sustainable development and protecting the environment. He talks a lot about Antyodaya, the philosophy of Pandit Deendayal Upadhyay ji. So he wants that it's very easy to have a median or average income of a certain level, but there could be a huge income disparity while still meeting those targets. It's measured usually, the economists measure it with what's called a Gini coefficient, which is an income disparity. So you could hit those targets while there are people in poverty and while people are very super rich. So what I liked about Honorable Prime Minister's vision is he's wanting less and less income and regional disparities as well. So it was a more kind of a holistic vision of a developed nation.
Are you arguing that in the last 10 or 11 years, and I have to go to this now, in the last 10, 11 years, the income disparity, the efforts that the Prime Minister has taken is to reduce that income disparity, or has income disparity increased over time?
No, the data shows that it has reduced.
The data shows that
It has reduced. There's obviously a lot more work that needs to be done, but the data supports that it has reduced.
Okay.
And whilst the traditional metrics that I was mentioning, per capita income, GDP, that has grown substantially.
Okay.
So that is
Give us some numbers. What is per capita
just to
income?
give you an
where we
idea
were and where
that
we are at?
in 2014, the GDP was approximately $2 trillion. We are presently at something like 4.3 trillion, and now we are the fourth largest economy. The per capita
This
income.
is adjusted to the exchange rate?
Yes, adjusted. In fact, in PPP terms, which is purchasing power parity, we are presently at something like 16 or 17 trillion, making us the third largest economy in PPP terms.
Okay.
And per capita income in 2014 was about $1,500, $1,500, and presently it is close to $3,000, 2,900 something.
So is this inflation adjusted?
Yeah. So in all this, it is all.
This 1,500 and doubling of per capita income, is it inflation adjusted?
No, but it's in dollar terms.
Okay.
So indirectly it is.
Okay.
So and
You got
it's
to explain.
everything.
I'm not. Listening to these numbers, I know basics about these numbers, but I also want anybody who's watching this video should get a sense of, because these are basic questions that anybody would have. That if we're saying that income has doubled since 2014, because we were at 1,500 USD, now we're standing at 3,000 USD. This is taking into account inflation.
No, not directly.
Not directly.
Not directly, because we are talking in dollar terms.
Okay.
Because all the metrics, since the entire thing is about a developed nation, these are all, metrics that are quoted in US dollars.
Okay.
By the international organizations. So, once we are quoting that, we've had a depreciation of the Indian rupee versus the dollar. The dollar, in short, the dollar has got more expensive over the years, which it does. Typically, the dollar is, growing 2 to 3% every year.
Okay.
So either you can say that the dollar is growing 2 to 3% every year,
stronger.
or you can say that the rupee is depreciating by that much against the dollar.
But it was
So it's adjusted for that.
Okay. But it also argued that the rupee is getting weaker by the day. But when you see global economic metrics and your situation of recession all across the world, different places, different time, in the last 11 years, we've stood on a strong foundation, and surprisingly strong foundation, because in the first term of the Prime Minister, we saw demonetization, introduction of GST also. That was a big shocker for our economy.
Right.
Surprisingly, our economy has been resilient. The way we've done it, what do you have to say about that?
Absolutely. I think, the Prime Minister, Finance Minister, etc., they've been very prudent. We have not taken any risky bets. You've held the steering wheel very firmly, even despite all the reforms, big bang reforms that have happened within India, as well as our reaction to big events globally, right? There have been dramatic events over the last 10 years, and especially so in the last few years, whether it's COVID, various wars, etc. We have always had a very prudent, fiscal policy. So that's how the economy is still very resilient.
But what do you think? And since you come from the corporate industrial background, what do you think are some sectors that India should definitely focus on? And this I'll ask because you've dealt in the book as well, here and there. what are the sectors that India should particularly take a look at, considering where we stand today
Sure.
and
So,
what our goals are?
I there are 20 chapters delving into all aspects, but one of the things very important is manufacturing, make in India, production linked incentives, PLI. All these we have to become a strong manufacturing led growth in India, which is being pushed. Atmanirbharta is not merely a slogan. I think it's become now a strategic imperative that we have control of manufacturing in India. The government is now in fact looking even more deeply at end to end value and supply chains.
Yes.
So that is important because you could be manufacturing some part of it, but one needs to be aware and mindful of where the raw materials are coming from.
On the
So this is
second the logistics go bonkers or go for a toss, the entire supply chain is out of the window and manufacturing
correct.
process takes a
So,
hit.
they are
This is exactly what we faced during COVID as well, right?
absolutely. So this is something that they are very mindful of.
Hmm.
They are going kind of layer by layer. So one is definitely you have to boost manufacturing. Once that is stabilized, you got to look at raw material supplies, etc. So that is very important. The other thing that's extremely important is infrastructure. But we are seeing that. I think there's probably no one in India who would not be directly impacted in a positive manner. You see the highways, railways, airports, etc. So world-class infrastructure, there's a massive spend on infrastructure, and it's extremely critical because infrastructure impacts all other sectors.
Absolutely.
Directly or indirectly. The third thing I would stress would be, new technology and digital infrastructure. We've already done, we have probably the world's best digital public infrastructure in place today. New technologies, whether it's AI, etc., India is doing a lot of work. What I find especially interesting about these, one thing, sorry, I forgot to mention that infrastructure, each rupee spent on infrastructure has a nearly 4 to 5x, leverage
Okay.
in the economy for every rupee spent on infrastructure. Similarly, in the new technology space, what people don't realize is that we are conditioned, our mind is conditioned to think linearly. We think in a linear fashion. Means we think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how the human brain is hardwired. What we find difficult to grasp is non-linear exponential thinking, which is 2, 4, 8, 16. And new technologies have the potential to deliver that and also leapfrog, standard pathways of growth. So, say a Western country in certain things have taken 20 years to grow to a certain standard with technology, and India has used that, whether it's digital payments, etc. We can leapfrog decades and years of, pathways with that. So, what benefits will accrue from these new technologies will be giving us kind of exponential, returns and step changes that is difficult to always compute.
That being said, and great segue into a bunch of questions now I have. See, in terms of infrastructure, definitely yes, we see a lot of development all around us. But we're also seeing that a lot more needs to be done. Because there's urban infrastructure. You
Sure.
come from a remarkable city of Pune. And if one has to think of, those few cities all across the country which have good socio-cultural life, good economy, good transport system and things like that, good weather, stable in terms of there's no earthquakes or comparatively lesser earthquakes or volcanoes or cyclones. So Pune becomes one of those cities. So we're not going to talk about Pune, but we're definitely going to touch on Bangalore or we're going to touch on Gurugram.
Sure.
Because we think, see, a lot of infrastructure development is being done. A lot of money is also being poured. But there are also a lot of gaps. How is it that we should be able to, I think there should be some way we'll leapfrog it. We imagine things 20, 30 years down the line. For instance, when a city model is planned out, On maps, it's laid out. It's imagined by 2030, we will have this much of space. We need to make these wide roads. We need to have this sewage and transport system, and etc. etc. But that planning is to in accordance with how we imagine the movement of number of people today. By the time that project is completed, it's already 2035. So by 2035, a lot has changed already. Do you think that vision perhaps is missing, and that is perhaps what was planned with Viksit Bharat? That everything that you do, perhaps for policymakers, for thinkers, for intelligentsia, for academia, for corporate space, imagine what is it going to be after 25 years, and then you focus and energize yourself. This is how you're going to do.
It's a good point, Arjun. In fact, I think this is exactly how the government is now thinking.
Mm.
They are thinking decades ahead, and how do we build an infrastructure for India, well into the future.
Yes.
So that thinking, I think you're right. The thought process did not exist earlier. The time frames thought of were shorter. I think this has changed dramatically, and this is how they are thinking. One, to reach our 2047 targets,
Mm.
I've explained how we'll get there, I've given recommendations, all that, but I've also listed out a few challenges at a high level. One of them is infrastructure deficit, I've called it. However, the infrastructure deficit is also a challenge just from a government structure in some sense, because certain projects, are conducted by the local city municipal corporation, so a city level government. Certain things are at a state level and certain things at a central level. So, regretfully, some of these challenges are also the ones that are creating these deficits. Because central government, the speed is remarkable. If you realize, they always proudly say, and which we have seen, that this is one of the governments that has not only laid the foundations of many very large infrastructure projects, but also gone ahead and cut the ribbon,
Yes.
and also fairly quickly.
Yep.
But yes, definitely there are challenges at some state levels and at some city levels. So this is also.
In fact, something that I recollect in 2014 when Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office, soon after there were articles all across in different newspapers and magazines that bureaucrats have been asked to be in the office in time. They have to stay longer. They have to ensure that files are in order. In fact, the introduction of digital governance, the introduction of e-file management systems.
Right.
These are those small changes that ensure that bureaucracy and entire process and system that is in place gets into work and gets into that action mode.
Absolutely. In fact, it's a good point, Arjun, because, like I mentioned, I look at things from a corporate lens. Like I'd mentioned about the vision and mission statement. What I see and have observed myself, this is like typically how corporates work. That's why corporates have are answerable to shareholders. They have to continuously drive growth quarter to quarter. So in a very similar manner, I find this government is working. Because first time, you're setting targets, and then you're not reviewing the targets at the end of 5 years in, 4 years, 6 months down the line. Suddenly you come to know that there are gaps and you're very far off from the targets. This time they are setting targets, they are monitoring them closely, continuously, just like any corporate would. And what is the best part of Honorable Prime Minister is once the targets are met, then new targets are set.
The new targets
New
are
stretch targets are set. So this is just like how a corporate would work. And I think that's where the difference is coming from.
Moving on, the second point you made was about manufacturing. Generally, any country's growth, or at least traditional economists were talking about or had been talking about, that the path of growth moves from agriculture to manufacturing sector and then services industry. This is something like what happened in the US. This Europe has also become developed. In India, for some reason, we lost out on a lot of manufacturing opportunities because China built itself up like anything. Having said that, how to boost manufacturing in the country? What are the lapses? How can we fix that? Of course, PLIs, these are
Sure.
initiatives that we know about, we've been talking about. These are nudging the industry, nudging the sector to work in the direction. My question, however, is that 11 years on, There are many process reforms, by the way, which have happened.
Mhm.
PLI is being top of it, and other small process reforms which have large impact.
Right.
That has essentially happened. But on ground, what else? Where are we lagging, and what needs to be done to move forward in that direction?
So, couple of things. It's a natural progression, like you said. However, unlike the United States, we are still very strong in manufacturing. We've not kind of left everything to some other country. We are strong across sectors, across most product lines, etc. If you see, in the US, it has been a big problem that they've moved so far away from manufacturing that now they are trying to get into it in a big way and, trying to use tariffs, etc. However, India, we have always been strong. Yes, certain things move to China, dependency, etc., because of low cost manufacturing. But I feel it is coming back because not now everything in China is not low cost anymore.
Yep.
So India is developing, and the PLI scheme has really pushed us, not only merely nudged us. In a very short time, we're the second largest, say, mobile manufacturer in the world. It's a very huge achievement if you see the number of years it's taken. If you see now with the determination and focus, how we are trying to become big in semiconductor manufacturing. There's a huge push. So the gaps are being
Yeah, I think
identified.
the semiconductor mission also.
Yeah, it's huge. And now, for example, defense manufacturing. So not only modernization of the armed forces, it's also Atmanirbharta in defense production. And we are in fact exporting a lot of defense equipment
Absolutely.
globally.
Exactly.
We saw some of this prowess recently in Operation Sindoor with Indian technology and equipment. So I think we're taking all the right steps. That is for sure. And
How about skilling? Do you think our workforce is skilled enough to take on the large powerhouse that
see,
China
a
is?
lot needs to be done in skilling. However, I think a lot of the initiatives like Skill India, etc., are on the right path. With a country of our size and a huge population, everything needs to be accelerated, and the scale increased a lot. But I think what they are trying to do with the skilling programs, etc., are great. I think a lot needs to be also done at the college and school level. Are we really giving 21st century and industry skills to the students? That's also important.
But some would also argue that when China was being more, when operations, or when it was realized that operations need to move elsewhere from China, India had a great opportunity. But it is now moving towards East Asia. Do you think that's the case, or do you think there's still a lot of opportunity for us? Because we are a very big market. I mean, if our industry starts serving its own market itself, then also everybody's making good buck. But that being said, our ambition is not just serving ourselves, our ambition is to serving the world. With that background, do you think that industries are moving out of China towards East Asia, or are they converging towards India as well?
No, I think there are still enough opportunities for India. I think a lot of this has also come to India. It's not that India hasn't benefited from all of this. And like you rightly said, we have such a large domestic consumer class and such a large domestic driven economy that a lot of this is being consumed here. So there are opportunities that will keep coming, and we have also used a lot of those opportunities, like I was just mentioning mobile phone manufacturing, etc.
That's a great case study. In fact, what has happened by 2014, one could not imagine
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
we could be the second largest
Yeah.
manufacturer, and here we are. The third point that you made a mention of, apart from, of course, infrastructure, is digital and new technologies.
Right.
There is generally an argument that India is a great services industry. There are many CEOs from India, but less innovations in India. Do you think that's the case? What is the reason behind it? What should be the way ahead? Do you think India needs to work more on innovation that it has not perhaps focused upon? What do you have to say?
I think so. There is always a need for more and more innovation. That's for sure. I think that some of the larger companies may not have stressed innovation so much, especially in the software side. But if you see, there's a lot of innovation happening in our startup culture, which is really, puts us in a good space going ahead. So if you're aware, we have the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. I think 120 unicorns today in India. We are seeing a lot of interesting innovation coming. In fact, again, I'll give the example of what happened recently, Operation Sindoor, etc., especially in defense, aerospace. We have some tremendous new companies who are doing some exciting work.
No, since you have the exposure, can you recollect or give an example of some companies which have done some remarkable work in terms of innovation? Because see, this is where my question is coming from. I've worked on the topic of Haryana for many years. One reason why Haryana's economy got a major boost was because of the BPO industry that is established itself in early 1990s or mid 1990s in Gurgaon. Genpact came in and many international BPOs
Sure, yeah.
and KPOs and in fact setting up the larger services sector in the state because of the neighborhood of Delhi also and many other things. However, in many of these companies that were established, you see that they're giving those services to clients outside
Right.
India. They're making the money. It's not that the profits are not coming in. It's not
Sure.
that it's not going down. It's not trickling down.
Yeah.
All of that is happening. But what was missing was the innovation aspect. That what is the new thing that India is doing? We've given great leaders, great executives, remarkable names that you see, top 20 companies.
right,
You'll find
absolutely.
Indians all across the board. But are we in a position or are we skilled enough or are we ready to take the next leap where we are innovating and creating great products?
No, see, I'll definitely admit that there is a gap there. We need to now start focusing on what's called deep tech. Really deep technology, not just kind of, reinventing US models in India. We definitely need to do that. I think it will happen. It's kind of, again, a natural progression of things, but I agree that we need to, give more effort for real technology, deep technology. This will also come from risk capital. The way, again, things are structured in India, it's tough to really find large risk capital for deep tech, which has a gestation period which could be in decades. And, the way things, the laws, etc., are structured here. Why the US has been successful. In fact, one of the chapters in the book, I mention a case study related to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where I was, because I've studied their kind of startup ecosystem very deeply.
Okay.
And I've kind of pointed out how that is different, why they are successful, and where the gaps are vis-a-vis India. So this is very similar. We don't
Tell us
have,
more about that, please.
again, it lots comes to capital. I know that in MIT, somebody was working on fusion energy. Now, that's real deep tech. It's the energy that powers the sun and the stars. Fusion.
That's
And
perhaps
it's been a goal of for limitless clean energy. But they have companies who are working on this. And more importantly, one is to have people working on this, the skill sets required. The second is the aspect that to have people who've given capital to fund such ideas.
Absolutely.
Because they would burn a lot of money, you don't know when success will come. So the other factor is this. The third thing I feel most importantly missing is we need much more R&D happening, research and development happening, not only in the universities but also in the corporate sector. So in the US, again, there is a huge amount of spend that happens privately, aside from government, in R&D. Just to give you some numbers, because this is a topic that's close to my heart. I remember some of these numbers. The present, I think, R&D spend in India is like 0.65% of GDP. We should be at least 2% plus. So that's the kind of scale we
What are
need.
other countries, say, the other global
They'd all
powers?
be higher. They would
US,
be all 2% plus.
Russia as well?
Yeah, yeah.
China?
All those guys.
Oh.
Offhand, I don't remember the numbers, but they are definitely above that threshold. So I
above that
just talk about hitting 2%. But according to me, even that is a minimum.
That's a minimum. Because I think I remember I was talking about it in one of the panel conversations that in order to break even or essentially take that leap into Viksit Bharat, I call that framework a seed framework. That S stands for skilling and research also.
Right.
E stands for find ways to give more employment. Then the E stands for in order to get that employment, you got to do entrepreneurship, really feed onto that. But for entrepreneurs to become successful, you need development capital. Unless all of those four things just come together, there's no way we'll be able to make that leap.
Absolutely.
Because one reason why the English became successful in conquering India back in the day was compared to other regional powers, they were able to mobilize resources and capital at a much quicker pace. So, just bringing that capital around is a huge task. And I'm sure a lot is being done. Formalization of economy is going at a very high pace. That in consequence is increasing the capacity to raise funds also and really unfold or unshackle the space of venture capitalists in India. And I think that is taking shape. Of course, we need to work on startups which are more innovative. Of course, we need to work on startups which move beyond what Piyush Goyalji remarked now, the fastest delivery service. We have to move a little bit away from that and work on really genuine problems and perhaps find solutions.
Yeah. But I'm repeating that. Like, I think today, earlier in the startup world, capital was a problem. But I think there's enough capital availability in India today. However, what I'm saying for deep tech, you need risk capital, pure risk capital. You have commercial capital available in a sense, venture capitals, typical venture capital, the fund it has to start and end in typically 10 years. So the way things are structured, you can't blame them as well because they take a couple of years to raise a certain amount of fund size. Then they deploy it over the next few years and then they need to get it all back before the fund life ends maybe in 10 years, which is typical. So, you can't fund in that structure. How do you fund fusion energy?
That being said, let's go back to the introduction of your book. What is, according to you, is Viksit Bharat in 2047? Give us a bit of metrics also. And we've discussed how Prime Minister moves away from just the mere metrics. He wants to bridge the gap between the rich and poor. He wants to ensure that there's sustainable development. He wants to ensure that the development is done in a more ethical manner. And what, according as discussed in the book, is Viksit Bharat? And are we on the right path?
So, a couple of things. So, I won't repeat how he is viewing Viksit Bharat, which is also exciting for me. I think we are on the right path. Some of these numbers I mentioned, we are progressing well. In fact, I've written in
What
the
is the
book.
target for 2047?
So, the metric is that what is the per capita income. So, I'm computing that we'll cross $30 trillion GDP with a per capita income in excess of $18,000. Now, I just did a bit of back of the envelope. I call it the mathematics of the $30 trillion economy because I feel it's important for the average reader to understand how this number comes from. So, I did it in very simple manner that we are at 4 trillion, say today, and we have to grow to 30. So that is requiring, if you backward calculate, it requires a compounded annual growth rate of 9.2%.
Okay.
Now, this I'll just explain is in what is called nominal GDP with inflation.
What is compounded annual growth rate?
So it's a growth rate year on year is called a compounded annual growth rate. So I need 9.2% this year and next year continuously. However, it could also, it's an average ultimately.
Okay.
So if it's less this year, more next year, as long as over the next 22 years till 2047, we have an average of about that compounding of 9.2%.
Okay.
Now, secondly, to be noted is that this is a nominal GDP growth rate. which which includes inflation. Let me put it. Now, typically in India, the inflation rate has been about 4% under this government. Just to let you know, presently we've hit 2 point some percent inflation. It's come down quite a lot at present. So what this shows is that if you deduct the inflation rate from this 9.2%, it gives you what is the real GDP growth rate required. So which would be something like, I say, 6% plus we should be maintaining.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea, despite all the global issues and volatility today, we are growing at 6.5% presently. The other way I've looked at it, Arjun, is that I always like this thing called the rule of 72. So what rule of 72 does is if you divide the number 72 by any interest rate or growth rate, it gives you the number of years required to double your money or double the economy in this instance. So for example, you invest in mutual funds and you get a say 12% interest rate you earn from the mutual funds. They are growing at 12%. So 72 divided by 12 is equal to 6. So it means that you'll double your money in 6 years. So similar calculation have shown that we are looking to approximately make the economy go 8 times from today till 2047, which means there will be 3 doublings, 2 into 2 into 2. So I've also tried to show that with these growth rates and just the simple rule of 72, these are fairly, balanced assumptions and realistic growth rates. However, I've also said in that section that we maintain the pace of reforms, we maintain the developmental push, then these are achievable. In fact, another way of looking at it, it would be like a T20 cricket match. So all I'm trying to say with this mathematics is that the run rate required to win is, reasonable and achievable, provided we don't do anything risky and, try to lose our wickets or something like that. It's not a run rate of 20 or 30 runs and over that we need.
But then again, great calculation by the way, but in terms of the numbers, do we want to, and we are growing per your calculations, we achieved $30 trillion mark very comfortably by 2047.
Right.
And I've seen the book you marked, in general by 2047, we are expecting close to $50 trillion.
No, that was the other calculation. I'm just trying to say, I still stick with that 30 plus because that's a realistic number. And I'm just saying that.
So my question then becomes, have you had a chance to compare it with other developed economies, say America or China?
The way to look at it, our own growth, we are the fastest major growing economy in the world, fastest growing major economy.
We also have a lot to catch up.
Yeah, but again, historical data supports this. It's a great question because Japan did this in the 60s, South Korea did it, China did it. So they've had a decades, not only 1 decade, sometimes 2 decades of growth at a blistering pace.
This
and
is 7-8%
far higher. No, far higher.
2-digit.
Far higher, 2-digit
Okay.
growth rate.
So do we need to achieve?
No, we don't need a double-digit growth to achieve these numbers. But I'm just trying to say that historically, these countries like Japan, South Korea, China, China is major. It's a large country. They've done it with sustained double-digit growth lasting a decade or more. And so there are historical precedents to this.
So if one is to crack it, and of course this book is not about China, if one is to crack it, are we seeing any inflection points in near future with the reforms that are happening, with the leadership that is in place? Do we expect in the next 5-10 years there'll be another jolt of growth happening? Any projections? Where do we see in the next decade?
I've tried to keep this a little more simpler, but I had, kind of hinted at this when I spoke about technology and digital stuff, where we can have what is called a sudden step change.
Yeah.
I mean, linear growth is like this. Step is literally certain things happen where you don't go like this, you suddenly step up, just like a staircase step. So these things, there are a lot of, I feel, ingredients in the pot which
Ready
are
for
being
that.
stirred, where suddenly a lot of these unknown step change benefits can come. Technology is one. The other thing is infrastructure, like I said, has a leverage effect. There are also a lot of work that has happened which could suddenly have a compounding effect, which one is very difficult to kind of predict. But we have good ingredients in the pot which can suddenly give us surprises beyond
Beyond these
these
numbers and
simpler
metrics.
projections, according to me.
But I want you to go back a bit and bring your experience of working on the book on the Northeast.
Mhm.
Infrastructural development in the Northeast, has it accrued the same benefits over the years as you are perhaps projecting all across the country?
In fact, a lot more because that was highly underdeveloped region with massive infrastructure deficit. In fact, certain places I wouldn't even use the word deficit; it was non-existent. So
Absolutely.
first time when airports came, railways came, etc. There have been dramatic changes to the economy and to the lives of people there. You'll be surprised to know now a place like Assam, there one of the biggest semiconductor manufacturing is going to be happening in Assam with Tata Group.
Really?
Yeah, yeah,
That's something.
yeah. So, a lot of even high-tech manufacturing you will be seeing now in
So
the
essentially, what we are doing,
northeast region.
so essentially, what is happening, what was otherwise imagined as perhaps what could be a hub and spoke model. There were different hubs. So far you've imagined Gurgaon being a hub, Bangalore being one, Chennai then becoming one, Hyderabad being one, Mumbai being one, um, Ahmedabad perhaps. Uh, Now what you're arguing is a lot more of these hubs are going to come up where such development, such new spaces or new industry would be established.
More than hubs, I'm seeing them as just regions. Previously certain regions which were lagging behind and which we didn't think, the goal was to just merely kind of provide more infrastructure, pull that region up. Now those regions are going to become growth engines, just like Northeast.
Great point,
Uh,
great point.
yeah, so I think this is
And
where the difference will happen.
an important thing to imagine it all.
Means instead of like using resources, they are going to give output.
Yeah,
These
exactly.
certain kind
So
of.
what is happening is, see, in order for the entire country to lift itself up, you need all the basic ingredients, the basic foundation in
Right.
its place. Can we say in 2025, all the basic requirements for India to catapult itself to the larger stage are in order, be it in terms of connectivity, in terms of technology, in terms of mobile connectivity, internet, transport services, logistical supply chains, national highway network, port infrastructure, railway network, connectivity through to different corners of the country, if not by road, by air.
Sure.
So do you think all these things are in place already now for us to make and argue that we are perhaps looking at
No, it's a
a bigger
great
change?
question, in fact. And I would argue yes. I think all the ingredients are in place. And we have to kind of just, increase the scale and speed of the same things.
Mhm.
And we'll have a big, transformation coming in.
Mhm.
But more than that, one thing I stress in the book, again, I'm just building on this, it's a great question that ingredients are in place, but we need, I think, more people to do the cooking. So, my throughout the book, my this theme of a call to action,
Mm.
where I firmly believe that everyone has to come forward and do something for nation building as per your own interest and resources. Like I speak to everyone about this, even in my home city of Pune. So much so that people are fed up with me and my lectures on nation building. But like my now, for example, my driver who's driving me around, he used to always initially tell me, Ki, what can I do? मैं गरीब हूँ, all that. So I said it's very simple, Modi ji's ideas of nation building. Swachh Bharat showed us that everyone collectively looking to maintain cleanliness can have a dramatic effect. Similarly, I told him that, you don't break any traffic rule. You spoke about Bangalore and Gurgaon and all that. I'm just saying, you imagine a scenario where all of us are following traffic signals. We will, change this chaos into a utopia. It's very easy to blame government and corporation and police and traffic police. But I'm just saying ki if we just start following traffic signals, we don't come from the wrong way, we stop at a red light, how much dramatic change that is. So for me, that is also nation building.
Absolutely, and I think we connect there because I also talk about it in many of my lectures and speeches also that it is perhaps time that Indians collectively start thinking on the lines that whatever they are doing should be treated as service for the nation.
Right.
Can we imagine that any person who is doing his basic job, he's doing that, or he or she is basically doing that job with an idea that in the real terms it's small service towards the nation. So that includes a taxi driver doing his job well. That
Right.
includes a plumber doing his job well. That
Right.
includes a guy who is fixing computers or fixing some machinery. And imagine that he's doing it.
Right.
If he does his job well, he's actually feeding into the larger grid of service to the nation. And I think if that happens, if everybody starts thinking about that, in that collective consciousness appears, then that perhaps is right fodder for us to leap into the future.
Absolutely. And I think along with that is something else that I talk about, which is this everything is possible confidence. We can keep thinking the glass is half full, be negative about things. But, when we have all the ingredients in place, data is showing that you're the fastest growing major economy in the world consistently. Things are going well. I feel India has to now adopt this everything is possible confidence as well.
Mhm. Let's jump into some topics that you've discussed in the book, and rather than discussing where we are or where we stand, let's jump onto what more can be done. Because let's switch this podcast conversation into something where young people or otherwise just people can start thinking
Sure.
about what can we do to catapult our nation towards Viksit Bharat. There's a topic, of course, we've discussed infrastructure at length. Let's come into education and skill development. What more can be done in the sector?
So, there are big gaps in education. We need to have many, many more world class universities now in India. We have some tremendously.
Southampton University opened its campus in India, in Gurgaon.
There are
So,
many.
so
There are a number of top US universities who've recently signed agreements with government of Maharashtra to set up there. But I'm saying aside from that, we ourselves have some, top level institutes in India. But the government is doing what it needs to do. You know the numbers, how many new IITs and IIMs, etc., have been set up. But a lot more needs to be done. So I think private universities are also mushrooming. Obviously, again, everything the scale that is required in India, we can't have enough. So the speed and scale, like I mentioned about everything, needs to get going. I think government is trying to do what it can to facilitate even private universities. The new education policy, I think, is a very big step in the right direction. The NEP. Within that, they've included things like the Indian Knowledge System (IKS), which is very, very important. We must appreciate our strengths. Teach the students about that. So I would think it's more just speed and scale.
there's an important point that in education sector you've made a mention of National Education Monitoring Council. That whatever reforms
Right.
are happening, there should be a council which monitors all these things
Right.
and monitors education. Great point there. What about entrepreneurship and startup culture? What are the bottlenecks and what needs to be done?
See, I think it's getting quite prevalent. I serve as I am not only an angel investor, I'm also a startup mentor with a few organizations, including the Atal Innovation Mission, and I'm connected with few of the Atal incubation centers. What gives me great hope, Arjun, is that when I meet teams sitting in Pune a lot of them are from the tier 2, 3 towns, and some
Mm.
even from the rural background.
Mhm.
Rural background may be coming in with, ideas in agri-tech, etc., agricultural technology. But what this gives me tremendous hope, because
Mm.
it's not that the innovation and startup ideas are mushrooming only in the metro
Metro
cities
cities,
and tier
yes.
1 cities. It shows that this culture has become all pervasive. What we need much more of is mentoring, because these teams need mentorship. I think that's critical. Capital, there is now enough avenues. Capital will come. A lot of these teams, they have great structure from the government of India. There's a Startup India Seed Fund Committee which gives grants. So, nobody is burdened with equity and having to return the money.
Mhm.
So government is trying to seed this, genuinely seed it, giving grants of 10 lakh, 15 lakhs, right up to 25 lakhs
Mhm.
to startup teams. And then, they can get going and try and get outside capital as well. So I would think mentorship, number one,
Mhm.
followed by more accessibility and availability of capital.
Mhm.
Because I think the children they've seen the Shark Tanks, etc. They're all enthused. They all want to become entrepreneurs. So there's another good change that I'm seeing.
Mm.
They are now looking to become, job creators instead of job seekers.
That's a remarkable change
So
that
I'm
has
really
happened in the
seeing
last
this.
10 years. Because about 10 years ago, the obsession for government jobs was crazy. And then you figure out in the last 2, 3 years, there are entrepreneurs blossoming from
Yeah,
different corners of the country. And even if they're not on Shark Tank or elsewhere, you'd find them doing some great stuff uh, wherever they are. I mean,
absolutely.
building just I heard of a cafe blossoming in Manipur. They're
Yeah,
doing great business. So people are now moving away from the idea of just getting into the corporate grind or getting a job or a government job
absolutely.
essentially, but also getting into that flavor of that I want to, if I want to start a business, I can do it today.
No,
It's
absolutely.
the idea of that business or entrepreneurship is really tough. Of course it's tough, it's not easy. You have to
Absolutely.
put in the hours, you have to put in the work, but the very idea that it's not unattainable or unachievable anymore. Back in the day, 20, 25 years ago, the sole focus of any middle class family was just to ensure a job and to
Absolutely.
because that is a prerequisite to sort of feed their own families. Now is the next generation as it takes over, it is imagining that it's possible to make a unicorn in the country as long as you put in the hours and the
Absolutely.
work and bring the right ingredients together, which you argue that India essentially has
Yeah.
those right ingredients in the pot.
And I absolutely agree with you. It's not that these people don't know the statistics. They know 90% fail
Mm.
startups. They know all this.
Mm.
So still they're pursuing this path, and it's a huge opportunity cost of not having a salary and a job after graduating. And many of them, come from family backgrounds that they need a job and that salary is essential. So it tells me, it signals to me that that there's this huge self-confidence building up in India amongst the youth, which is a great signal to me. And second, that they have a great confidence in India as well
Mm.
and on our journey of Viksit Bharat. Because why will they take a bet? Not only is a startup difficult to do it in India,
Mhm.
so they're confident about themselves and the nation.
It's something like you got to be right once. You do your businesses, you start up, you get onto that entrepreneurial journey. It may fail, start another one, but you got to be right once. It's
Yeah,
like UPSC also, by the way, civil services examination. You got 5, 6 attempts,
attempts, yes.
but you got to clear just once.
Once.
uh, you've also talked about MIT's approach to entrepreneurial education. Tell us a bit about it because it's interesting coming from where you've spent your time at MIT and then you are also in that business space. Tell us a bit about what this specific topic in your book is about.
MIT is a very highly academic, intellectual place. So it's a place where naturally also a lot of ideas are mushrooming. What I think sets their startup culture, which is very different from in India, is there's a lot of emphasis on there are no like silos at MIT. So they encourage students from all fields to interact with each other very freely. They encourage teams to be formed with, a team. They in fact emphasize a lot on teamwork, and they want the team to be made up of students with different and diverse backgrounds. You bring different skill sets on the table. They also encourage this quick try and fail kind of model. Failure is not looked at badly at all in the US. So they in fact tell you do small experiments, try fail. Quickly kind of learn from that and keep moving ahead.
Yeah, keep yourself small until
Ha.
you've cracked it.
Plus, there is a lot of then, they have this culture of a lot of university-wide competitions that take place in the startup phase. So even at a university level, the institution itself is giving huge grants and prizes. One of the, I think, if I'm not mistaken, one of the biggest prizes there is called a 100K competition, which means $100,000. So, for a student team to win $100,000 is quite big even there. So a lot of these things are done to encourage, teams and startups. Also, there is a center there, and there are courses that are run. MIT again is a, like I said, a very quant school, as it's called, quantitative. Everything is numbers. So they feel that they can teach entrepreneurship. There's a course which, if I'm not mistaken, it's called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. There is a professor who's written a book where he's broken up the entire startup journey, if I'm not mistaken, in 24 or 32 steps. So they, again, I mentioned to you that they teach you to think in frameworks and in a very structured manner. That's how my book came about as well. So they've literally said that you follow these steps towards setting up a solid startup. Obviously, no one can guarantee you success unless your idea is good, but it allows you to build a startup in a very structured manner.
So essentially, we've discussed entrepreneurship, we've discussed services sector, a bit of technology space, and manufacturing. How about agriculture? Where do we stand today?
So,
Because it's one of those topics. For some reason, you feel apart from the farmers' protest right around the COVID time, conversations around agriculture are slowing down, or you don't see many of these conversations happening in many places apart from just the regular spots which are talking about it. Where do we stand in terms of agriculture? What has been done so far, and what needs to be done to march ahead?
so I think a lot of push now coming in from the government is towards increasing agricultural productivity, and
Okay.
again in a sustainable manner. You can't have always a usage of foreign seeds or trying to plant crops that are not suited to the Indian climatic conditions.
Mhm.
Honorable Prime Minister also speaks a lot about this. So they want to boost productivity while sustainable. So if you have, crops or seeds that are more suited to our local conditions,
Mhm.
it requires less fertilizer, it requires less pesticides. So all these are create a good virtuous cycle.
Mhm.
Less chemicals, more productivity, more money into the hands of the farmers. And then, boosting this again with what I was mentioning, like leapfrog technology. So if you also know, you're from Haryana, you would know a little more than me. A lot of technology is coming in with apps. You can take photos of crops. It'll tell you what needs to be done. You're using drones. There's this full thing with Drone Didi, etc.
Propagated very well. Drone Didi has been popularized
Yeah,
very
so I,
well.
I find this amazing. So the full thing is this, the problems of Indian agriculture have been fragmented, small land holdings, low productivity, too much dependence on chemicals. So, they're trying to ensure how we can
So do
kind
you
of,
think it's perhaps a solution that people who are in some way in disguised employment in agriculture, we find a way that they find employment either as entrepreneurs or employable elsewhere through skilling institutions and skilling infrastructure? The disguised employment is limited, and these guys are employed as a proper formalized workforce somewhere. And people who are tilling the land ensure that the productivity of it is increased. For that, the government is giving inputs in terms of new reforms, in terms of neem coated urea, in terms of modern technologies. A lot is happening. And then just providing a lot more support in terms of sale of their produce and so on and so forth. But also introducing corporate in that space. Plantations are doing remarkably well, but in other areas, um, do you think bringing more corporates in that practice would be helpful, or is that that needs some sort of a balancing act also?
I think balancing act, and it's tough to say, it's not one size fits all sort of solutions here. But I think there are many good stories coming out. I think the next step with after using technology and boosting productivity is how do you go up the value chain?
Yeah.
So a lot of people, you don't why get a necessarily a corporate in who would be, really eating the large pie of that value chain. A lot of farmers, there are many stories, offhand, I wouldn't remember names, but many people have come, like from farm to table, organic
Fresh concepts.
producer. Yeah, then they're also processing it to do a value add. They've now started doing brands around it.
Yes,
D2C, direct to consumer brands are getting very valuable. So there's so many stories. I think you go on Amazon, most products you'll find, and you go deep down, you'll find that it is a story like this,
It's a story
where
like
some farmer has decided to further process it, make a product that a consumer can consume directly, D2C. Then he's done a good branding around it. He's pushing that. So
In fact,
I would love this sort of stuff to grow more.
In fact, internet has been a great enabler in that sense.
Exactly.
It's unleashed, the D2C business in India. It's unleashed.
Yeah, because as long as you don't have to now, earlier, these large corporates were built because they, through hard work and tremendous amount of investment in money and time, built the distribution networks. That's why they were untouchable. Now, because of all this technology, anybody can start a D2C brand, and they're using any of the, e-commerce or quick commerce to distribute this anywhere across the country. So I think it's leveling the playing field. It's democratizing a lot of this.
But then, this is essentially where we close to a larger or come close to the big elephant in the room, because we've discussed politics, we've discussed different sectors. There are a lot more bureaucratic and perhaps process reforms also required. How far we've gotten from 2014?
See, I think, the way I see it, I think, again, it was done step by step. You can't do everything all at once. So initially, the idea was to do the big structural reforms, right? Whether it's the insolvency banking code, the GST, digital payments, the big structural reforms happened first. I honestly feel, Honorable Prime Minister has gone about it by design and in a very structured, systematic manner. Now, definitely, they are at a level of process reforms where various acts, codes, regulations are being looked at line by line to see whether complexity can be reduced and boost ease of doing business. This is the big thrust, ease of doing business. Within that, as you know, legislation has also come, the Jan Vishwas Act. The idea is to reduce criminal provisions in many of the things. Why should entrepreneurs and honest businessmen have to suffer the indignity or the stress of criminal cases being filed against him, which if he's done nothing knowingly wrong. So a lot of these things are being done where ease of doing business goes up, complexity reduces, the stress and tension of an entrepreneur, at least the honest one, should go down. So I think we're on the right track. Again, just like my recurring theme, Arjun, unfortunately, is that everything is being done correctly. We just need to now ramp all of this up.
But since when has all of these been being done correctly? Because 2014, and you argue 1991 as an inflection point. In your conclusion, you make a comparison of how far we've come from 1991, which is when the reforms. Since 2014, and 2014 is an important inflection point because Prime Minister Narendra Modi took office. How much of it has happened since 2014? How was Prime Minister Narendra Modi central to all of it? Is it as big an impact as we see today?
I personally think that it's a massive impact. It's all his governance style, where there is a huge emphasis on implementation. That's the difference. You can enact any law or set up any program or initiative. If you're not implementing, it's meaningless. So I think implementation is key, monitoring is second, and I think third is accountability. I think he ensures that the people around him are accountable to goals, targets. So I would again, again putting on my corporate lens, I view it as a CEO, right? How is the CEO handling things? And if I was to again look at it in corporate terms, I am a shareholder of India. We all are, Arjun, a shareholder of Bharat in some sense because, you live here, you work here. So everybody would have some home, some asset, something to do with India. So if the country does well, you've seen your wealth grow, or if it doesn't do well, it will decline. So I personally think that everyone would have seen a definite good growth in that. So if I was a investor and a shareholder of Bharat, I think I should be happy with the results and returns my CEO and chairman has given. So, I would really think. And if anyone steps
That's a
back,
great example to perhaps bring it to close. Congratulations for writing this book. Congratulations.
thank you so much.
You've done a great job. And I hope to continue this conversation with you any other day. There are many topics that we've touched, yet there are many more topics that perhaps need a longer conversation. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you had a great time
I had a
discussing
great
these
time. Thank
topics.
you so much.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
Thank
Namaskar.
you. Namaskar.